one. Okay, so let's call our meeting to order. This is the Fire and Emergency Management Committee meeting. It's Monday, May 16th, 2022. And let's see, can we have the record reflect that we have Director Giardini, Director Logan, our General Manager, and our Fire Chief Peterson, all present. And with that, we'll move to our first agenda item. And that is a review and update of the conceptual fire station expansion layout floor plan. And this will be, the committee will be given a presentation, I understand.
Well, we're hoping to have,
on,
you want to check in with Rubio and let's see if he's having a hard time getting on for whatever reason. We had the architect lined up to join us this morning and he's not here yet. And
Well, do we want to just move to the next item?
well, the next items 1,
And
2, and 3
two.
need to be handled in sequence.
So let's talk about item number 4. Let's.
Okay, But let me, that's,
He's here right now.
okay, sorry. There we
Is
go.
there now? Okay.
Rubio, you there?
Yep, good morning.
Oh, good morning.
Okay, he's here,
Okay,
so we
so-
can go ahead and start with item number 1. Just to provide a little bit of background, you may recall that this committee met in early March and reviewed like the conceptual plans for the fire station expansion. You had some comments about the areas of some areas of concern where we saw some space that might look a little tight, and the chief talked about a couple of concepts that where we could make some pretty overall pretty minor modifications. Those were done within a couple of weeks, and we sent you those updated plans a couple of, once they were available. I think that was about around April 1st. Since then, we have kind of finalized this, not finalized, it's probably the wrong term, but it kind of accepted the conceptual layout and asked the architect to continue with the next sort of phase of the work, which was to develop the cost estimates. But we thought, since you were meeting again today, that it would make sense to bring up this plan just to make sure you don't have any questions about what's shown here. We now have the dimensions shown, go over anything that you'd like to, and again, Rubio is available and on the meeting with us. So I think we have a way of bringing it up.
Yeah, I can bring him up, Rubio, if you can see him.
Yeah, if you force that image onto that screen, you will. Right? Can't you, the virtual link?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yep, I see it.
So that's the same plans as we provided to you in hard copy. Rubio, you can see those now. And there were, again, from your meeting when this committee last met in March, there were some pretty minor changes to the plans, actually quite minor. The day room area was enlarged a little bit. We were concerned about just that being kind of tight. That was one of the areas. The storage room was made a little smaller. Those kinds of things.
Yeah, so we slid the wall over here and here, gave some room to the day room, slid this wall back right here a little bit to open it up even more. It reduced the size of this clean room, but hopefully we're not spending a lot of time in there except for walking through. So that was the main concern, was this area and how tight it was. And pretty much everything else stayed the same, but we added dimensions. We didn't do anything else, right, Rubio, beyond that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
I have a question. So in the clean room, the squares are lockers? Is that-
Yes.
Okay, and so the distance from between the lockers, what's that distance? Because is it 4 or 5 feet enough for 2 people to stand between the 2 lockers?
Do you know what that distance is between the lockers in the clean room, Rubio?
I think for that narrow spot, yeah, I would say it's at least 4 feet. The lockers that were shown are almost 2x2 square
True.
lockers. So you can kind of extrapolate there that, yeah, we've got about 4 feet in there.
Pretty tight, but if you're not spending much time in there.
No, it's basically just 1 or 2 people changing at a time. You're not gonna have,
A bunch of people in there.
the max you would have would be 3 people at a time.
Yeah, it's probably more, instead of looking at this as a locker room where the entire, like a team goes into the
Yeah,
change at once,
correct.
this is more like storage for their,
Yeah.
for their equipment.
Here,
Right.
And so they're not in and out of, I mean, it's kind of functioning as both storage for gear and then a hallway to the apparatus bay.
Okay.
And a place that you could remove gear and change after an incident, but that's not gonna occur all that often,
No.
right? I mean, so if they go to a typical, like a normal response, like a medical aid or something like that, there wouldn't be a need for them to take their clothes off and those kind of things unless there was some sort of circumstance, blood or something like that that they're
Correct.
exposed to,
well,
right?
today you have it on the far wall in the bay is where all of their
On the near wall and on the far
far
wall.
wall.
Correct.
And between the engine and where they stored their.
That's less
gear,
than 4 feet.
Less than, yeah, because that's what I was thinking. It's probably even much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably 3 feet maximum.
Well, it looks like from this drawing, I don't have my bifocals
about
on, but
4
it looks
feet.
like it's 11, is that 11
No,
feet?
because it dips down. There's.
Yeah.
You lose
well,
about 2 feet, so maybe.
2 feet.
So you're at 9'6".
Yeah,
Take away four is 5'6". But I was thinking usually, like I would think of Kennedy Club where they have a bench in between for you to sit
Yeah,
down. You guys
not-
don't do that?
No, that wouldn't be, this wouldn't be where we would be taking off our turnouts in that locker area. We would be taking them off more towards the extractor and the shower on the left side, which would
Oh,
be
I see.
right over here,
Yeah,
this area.
yeah.
And all we would be doing here is walking by and hanging them up
Oh, okay,
and then walking through here and out.
yeah,
okay.
That would be it.
that should be fine.
I'm just.
If it's just a pass through, it sounds like it's more storage than it is
Exactly,
actually.
correct,
Any kind of, let me stand here and get dressed.
correct.
Right, so I'm just making sure that.
No, I think it's a good question.
Yeah,
And the
Um,
other one was the workshop is pretty small, but
Yep.
how much do you do in the workshop? Is you need more storage than you need workshop?
yes. The workshop basically is just small tool stuff. So it's where we're gonna set our chainsaw and sharpen the chainsaw or work on a chainsaw bar or a small piece of equipment or something like that. We'll have the toolbox, a small tool bench. If you've been out in the Conex box, you can kind of see the area out there. That's where we do the most of that stuff, but just a small area is all that's needed, and it's only one person in there at a time.
Okay, I just wanted, most people, men, like bigger workshops, so I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure. Okay, that was just my questions on dimensions.
Okay,
And I'm fine with the layout. I
Okay,
think I mean, anything would be an improvement at this this point in time, but
yeah,
I think the layout, it appears to work. So on the first floor, the second floor, nothing's really changed on the second floor, right?
no,
That stayed pretty much the same.
correct.
I don't have any further questions. I think it's, I like the layout. I just hope we can someday fund it. Director Giardini, you have any other comments?
no, I'm good.
Okay, so do we don't need to make a motion on this. I think it's just a review item.
Yeah, it was just informational. Well, the important thing was, I think, because we got really, we're here because the cost estimates were released. And because we had those, I wanted to make sure you were familiar with what, a reminder of what we were costing.
Yeah,
And so, and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't, that you understood the changes that were made and now that we have the dimensions of those kind of things. So, yeah, we're ready to move to item 2 if you are.
Okay, so let's move to item 2, which is the fire station expansion cost estimate. And so you have a
Ruby?
document to pull up or hand in?
Yeah, Rubio, do you want me to pull up just the actual cost estimate or,
Okay,
Yeah,
So we provided the detailed, we included the work that the architect was providing for us. Once we had a go on the conceptual plans, they were providing a detailed cost estimate, and we received this, about 10 days ago, middle of the, or late the week prior to last week. So there was, I think from the staff's position, a fair bit of sticker shock, followed by, okay, what are we gonna do now? But we wanted to spend some time kind of going over the cost estimate, making sure that you were comfortable. Rubio's, again, obviously attending today's meeting. You could ask questions of him. I think we were, again, it's broken down. And again, just maybe we should just clarify, just real quick, the addition is all the work that's in the rear of the building, behind the engine bay. That's what's labeled as addition. And the renovation is fairly minor. I mean, they weren't enormous, but relocating a bathroom and doing some walls, I guess it's not that minor, but of the space that's taken up by the existing office. And then there would be some fairly minor renovation to the upstairs area, but it's mostly left open, the existing upstairs.
yeah, eliminating the stairs,
Yeah.
and closing that off, creating the hallway here. And then,
And the work in the existing area.
yeah, and opening up and essentially demolishing the bedrooms and the bathroom upstairs, so.
So that's the difference between addition and renovation. So I think I don't have a lot, I think, no reason to suggest that there's anything other than the fact that the estimates came in, quite a bit higher than what we were expecting. We started out this process thinking that this was something that was closer to the amount of funds that we had available. Obviously that was several months ago, and we continue to face cost increases. But I don't know, maybe it's best to say, Rubio, maybe you could start with just, okay, what were your impressions when the cost estimates were provided?
yeah, and just to kind of go back real quick, when we did start this, started talking about it in December and in early January as we're getting the contract together and getting ready to get started. And even, from those initial first meetings of programming and conceptual design, yeah, we were still anticipating, an industry standard of, anywhere from $500 to $600 a square foot. And kind of looking at where we were for new construction, we were still reasonably optimistic that we were going to be, $2 to $2.3 million, which was very close to what our goal was at the beginning. Since then, we've had a lot of intersecting factors that have kind of impacted the construction industry. Chief among those for us is inflation. As it continues to rise, I think we're up over 8% at this point and continue to be up over 8%. We had the material shortages that we're continuing to see, just not being able to get materials, as well as, we had a huge conflict between Russia and Ukraine, which, we've said, gas prices were already bad, but we're saying we're not buying gas anymore and we're not importing gas anymore from Russia. And that's a huge supplier for us. So the gas prices continue to rise, which is affecting the supply chain. If you can get stuff, great. Now it's getting it from point A to point B, which we're seeing a lot of increase on. So kind of coming up on the estimate as we were starting to prepare that and finish the drawings. You know, we're starting to hear a little bit of rumblings, you know, it's like, oh, be aware, be aware. You know, this is kind of coming down the pike, and, you know, it's not something that's unique for your area or your project. It's just we're feeling it across the board that all these things are impacting the construction industry in a profound way. I mean, we really haven't seen this type of thing, certainly in my lifetime. And I shared briefly with Chief, you know, the last time we kind of saw this was, you know, the early 2000s with the housing market boom that we were experiencing. And at the time, China was extremely busy in construction, and they were just buying up all steel. So steel was getting very scarce out there and very expensive. But even that, you know, we weren't seeing the type of stuff that we're having now, where we just have 3 or 4 different items that are conspiring against the construction industry, so to speak. So it was a little bit of a shock, but at the same time, you know, like I said, as we're kind of approaching that, and I was beginning to speak with my cost estimator for this project and cost estimator that I use for other projects. I do work with two different people. You know, we're starting to get a little bit of feedback that, hey, just be aware. You know, we're starting to see schools that we're preparing cost estimates for coming in at $1,000 per square foot, which is basically where we ended up on here for the new construction component of it. So, you know, unfortunately, that's just the time that we're living in right now. Whether we're going to see this long-term or short-term remains to be seen. We're seeing a little bit of prediction that we're flattening out a little bit. But again, you know, we're not mystics or people who can see into the future. You know, it's to be determined if this is just a flattening, resting, cooling period as we continue to climb, or if this is a cooling off period that's starting a downward trend.
So I have a question, Rubio.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of construction estimates, there's usually like a 10% leeway, knowing that, you know, you always end up seeing, you know, to exceed the estimated budget. Is that already built into this, or this estimate, or is this just the estimate that you think the actual cost will be?
Yeah, we do include what we call a design contingency, and there should be a line item on there. I can't see the screen right there, but I think it's the last line item in that middle box there, which is about 10%. That's to account for
Okay.
yeah, that's to account for the level of drawings that we have currently. Once we get into construction documents, or if you would see a construction document, estimate that design contingency would drop down to maybe 3.5 or 5%. Again, based on that, we've got full or complete drawings that he can look at and estimate on. And then your second question is, you know, the estimates that we give you or that we prepare, you know, these shouldn't be looked at as a guaranteed price. They should be looked at more of, this is the industry that we're at. This is about the area that we would expect to see a price come in. And as an example, if we told you, I think we were what, $5.1 million on this, you know, we would expect to see most bids come in around that number. You know, you may have somebody come in at 4.8 or 4.9. You might have somebody else come in at 5.2, 5.3, you know, but we would be around that number. So don't look at this number as a guaranteed price, again, because, you know, you kind of see it when you get the bids. You know, everybody doesn't come in at the same number. Everybody comes in at their own number, but we would expect to see them around this number that we provided for you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
The other question I have is regarding the renovation. So going back to the drawing, the renovation is really pretty much just on the first floor in the offices. Is that correct?
It encompasses both first and second floor. But obviously, like we were saying earlier, the second floor is basically removing some walls and completing the finishes up there. Obviously the major portion of the work is on the first floor.
Well, I guess where I'm going with this is because you've got the pricing, the addition versus the renovations. Can they be done separately and just focusing on the renovations?
Yeah, as part of our work, was discussing phasing of the project. And so currently the way the project is being shown is that phase 1 would be the expansion and phase 2 would be the, we'll call it the tenant improvement of the existing station, with the idea that you could do it all together, or you could do, based on budgeting, you could do phase 1 and phase 2, which would be the tenant improvement, might not happen for 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The phasing is also built around the need of the fire department. It wouldn't make a lot of sense to do phase 2 first because you would actually be losing out on spaces. Phase 1 is basically, we're adding the dorms, the restrooms, kitchen, dining, day room. Whereas in phase 2, where those spaces are currently on the second floor, we're basically taking all that out and creating just that new conference room area. So if we did phase 2 first, we'd be displacing the dorm living room area, basically, where we would have no place to put them at that point.
I'm just trying to look at from a cost standpoint, what can be achieved.
Yeah.
Because the budget itself is considerably more than what was anticipated.
Sure. Yep.
I have a question. One of the key exclusions was seismic upgrades. Is that shear walling, or what do you mean by that, that it wasn't included in the price?
That's the existing building. We're not retrofitting the existing building to meet current seismic capabilities. There's a line item in there too. Right now, I don't remember what section it is, but we call it a seismic separation. So when we build the new expansion, we're actually separating it as much as 2 inches from the existing facility. And we put what's called a seismic joint between the two of them so that they act as 2 different buildings. So the new building, the expansion, that is being built, designed and built to current seismic codes, including the Essential Services Act, which governs fire stations. And that will allow us to basically have those 2 buildings right next to each other and be able to walk in between the 2 of them without, like I said, having to upgrade the existing facility.
Okay, that's actually really beneficial.
Yeah.
And then the contractor's fee, that you're assuming that's the total for him and for all his laborers and all the workers together, is his total cost, the $313,000?
Yeah, I'm looking at, I'm trying to look at for some reason it's not popping up very big on my screen, but yeah, that would be his profit essentially. Yeah. So he hires his guys, but then he also is baking in profit for himself. Excuse me?
That's his cost to us.
Yes, yes.
On top of all the direct costs, so like the
Yes.
costs show up in the construction, like, so when you hire the painter, the painting cost, this I think is the assumption that the contractor's gonna make at least 7.5% profit on top of the work to bother with pursuing the project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure I was reading that right. And then the other thing is we're missing in exclusions where we don't have furnishings. So that's another added cost. I'm not positive what each dorm room needs, but that's probably another 50 to 100,000. Permit fees, won't the county waive the permit fees?
I think permit fees are in here, correct?
Not included. in the?
Yeah, no, the permit fees wouldn't be shown in this. This would be strictly,
We could, so there's a couple different kinds of permit costs. We could request from the county to have no costs for the building plan for the permit itself. However, if the project triggers impact fee costs, like we would have to charge ourselves, they probably won't waive those.
Right, so you've got road impact fees costs, which are huge.
Yeah.
This area.
and real quick on, in addition to that, one of the last items that I am putting together for you guys is also looking at other outside fees that you would reasonably expect to encounter as part of the project that are not in the construction estimate that you're looking at right now. So what you're looking at right now is just to do construction, to hire the general contractor and him to come out and do the project, but then you've got additional fees on top of that, which include a geotechnical report, possibly a total survey, special inspection that would have to go on. And we talked briefly at the beginning about possibly a construction manager, which would be fees outside of the construction, this construction cost estimate.
Why would you need a geotechnical report, not just a soils report? Geotechnical reports are way more expensive.
Well, I use those terms interchangeably. Once we talk to a geotechnical engineer, they will be able to determine the exact work that needs to happen to get us, the designers, the information that we need to complete the design, as well as for the records of the county building department.
Any more questions?
No, I mean, I
Well,
don't know why asking questions, the budget's just
I know.
ridiculous.
well, in the department relocation, that's one of the key exclusions as well. So the assumption is that if we did have the funds to do this renovation, the department would have to be relocated?
No,
No, so you would,
we would do it by phase. So build the existing and then move into that and then do the renovation.
okay, so
Well,
everyone
during-
stays here.
The addition is all, right, it would be inconvenient because it's space that we use, but it's all outside. It's not something that's super essential for the current operations. So the phase one, it'd be disruptive, but probably not displace anybody. Phase two, we would end up having to do something because all the office spaces would have to be gutted. We'd have to come up with something, but the living quarters would still be able to be here because phase one would be complete.
So the living quarters, you could still do the renovations with the living quarters with people staying there?
Yeah, because
No,
the current
so
living quarters
essentially,
are.
yeah, current living quarters are here. So
Oh,
if we
okay.
built the
Oh,
new,
you're moving him over there.
moving them over there, and then essentially what we could do, and what my initial thought was, is do the renovation of the upstairs before we touch anything down here, open that up completely, and we can move some modular offices up there
Yeah.
while we're renovating downstairs.
Okay,
So it would not be, it wouldn't.
so
be
it's not an
seamless.
additional cost.
It wouldn't be
that we
seamless.
have
There
to
might be
do.
some costs about trying to get computers and phones working in places we didn't anticipate, but it's not like we would need to be renting a building somewhere else.
Yeah,
Right.
And
Okay.
you probably have to move Tina too, because her office is right up against the renovation, and she's gonna be like blasted out with noise, so she'd have to move too.
Yeah, so, I think what ended up happening is we're still suffering from some sticker shock. And, so I haven't really dealt with
the planning.
the real logistics, because
Yeah.
it's not gonna happen while I'm alive probably, and with this dollars and cents that we're looking at, but it was set up so that it could be done in a way that didn't force the entire operation to relocate while the construction happened, or, operate out of a trailer or something of that nature. But it would be, particularly in the renovation phase, disruptive and inconvenient. I'm not sure it's gonna add a lot of costs.
Okay. And then the whole duration of this project is 9 months. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think the cost estimate is yeah, there's a little bit of sticker shock on that.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, and unless I win the lottery, I just don't see.
What if, so taking that $4 ticket, you know, they're better investment, it's the $4.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I don't know what else can be said about this. I mean, certainly it is a big dollar amount to swallow.
Yeah.
So,
And again, I think Rubio mentioned, there's some components in here that we need to, that in addition to what you're looking at, that we would be facing, that we need to add to the budget.
Yeah.
So that you have at some point, have a full picture of what it would take to do this today.
Yeah.
So, you know, things like the development impact fees and other reports that Rubio mentioned, and I mean, I haven't put any effort into developing those, because we wanted to get this to you now, because this was you know, new current information, and we thought it, I don't want to say it changes anything, but it was enough, it wasn't just a little bit more than we thought it would be. It's like double
Yeah.
what I think we were thinking 6 months ago.
yeah.
And again, you know, we don't have a crystal ball, so we can't really see into the future, but, you know, just to, I want to tiptoe around this because I don't want to sound like I'm pushing one thing or the other, particularly since it affects me. You know, you could move forward to say, well, we want to move forward. We want to complete the drawings in the event that 6, 8, 10 months from now, you know what, we are in that cooling off period and we are approaching, you know, normal construction budgeting. And so when we hit that time, we're ready to go. Or, you know what, I would rather wait to see if we hit that cooling off period in 8 months and then say, oh, it looks like we're trending down. Let's go ahead and finish the drawings at that point. You know, we'd spend the 4 or 5 months or whatever to complete the drawings and get them into building department and get signed off and get you ready to go to bid. So there's always that option. And of course, the third option, you know, is just, well, we don't have the money. We're just going to shelve it and we'll figure it out when we figure it out. But I did want to at least make that mention that, you know, you could roll the dice, so to speak, to say, let's move forward. And at least, if nothing else, at least we have the plans. So if the time comes that we do reach that cooling off point and we do approach where we are or what we're expecting budget wise, we're ready to go at that point. But just wanted to make you guys aware of that and
Yeah, I
Food for
appreciate
thought.
that. Yeah.
Ruby, I want to thank you for the complete cost estimate. It was really meticulously done. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. The problem I have with going ahead with construction drawings is, you know, I don't see us having the money in the next 11 months, 10 months. And then you go through code changes every 2 years, building code changes.
sure.
Kind of plans that we do up will need to be revised. And so I think the general layout and design that you've done is really good, but that's probably at least in my terms or my thoughts, the only thing we should hold on to now, because if we go ahead with construction drawings, they'll be outdated. Because I can't even see us having the money in 2 years, and we'll go through several building code changes.
So I think the only thing Rubio was saying, and in this year, we're coming up on a code adoption, so it'd be 3 years until we see it again. That if you did choose to go forward with construction plans at this time, we could do it per the new code. So make it in January, exactly. Do it for January. Now it's good for 3 years. You get that cooling off period, drops back to normal cost estimates. Now we're in at, you know, 2.3 or 2.5, and it's a feasible. I think that's what he was trying to.
Yes, yeah.
And I think that's a reasonable approach, but I think our board needs to look at how are we going to get the money to fund it? I mean, if our board can come up with a realistic way of funding this and the fire truck that was requested.
Oh, at the 5.3, or not, but I mean, if it dips back down to normal costs.
It's good, I mean, we have to have a substantial price, I mean, so I think maybe we're still in a price in rising. We have to go to a spot where the prices level off, then hopefully they drop. They would have to drop like 40% from these numbers to get us back into that, okay, now now we're piecing together the final bits and pieces of the financing, not 60 or 70% of the financing.
Right.
But how realistic is that prices are gonna drop 40%? We've never seen that in our entire lifetime.
I don't know.
And so, you know, I think our board needs to look at the reality of expanding the fire station and how do we get there at some point, whether it's through this plan or another plan. Like we need a major brainstorming.
Well, that's why we wanted to bring this to you now, where we could,
Because-
before we had a complete package, because this is really a game changer, this information in terms of how we approach this going forward, you know, we had challenges even when we had the cash to do the project,
Right.
right? So now we have challenges and only half the cash to the project theoretically. But I think while Rubio's here, I think it's worth talking about, are there components of, I mean, are there things that we've got in this conceptual plan that are really driving these costs that we could reconsider or eliminate? Now, I mean, I haven't dealt with that because I don't think we're in that whole, okay, I need to shed to 5 or 10% here because we're way over what we could realistically do. But nonetheless, any, you know, are there, I guess I'm asking, are there components in here that are optional or that could be eliminated that would save money on the on the cost estimate?
You know, there are always things that you can do to try to minimize costs. But like you say, you know, you're never going to realize the cost savings that you're trying to realize. You know, we couldn't take out enough of this to go from 5.1 to 2.2 or 2.3. You know, you could say, well, let's build the shell for the expansion and let's do the dorms and restrooms. And we're going to leave the first floor blank. And we'll continue to use the kitchen dining day room in the existing station, which would save you all that improvement costs for the first floor, your kitchen, your clean out room, storage and so forth. And it'd be basically just be a big warehouse. You could do something like that and it would give you, you know, quite a bit of savings, but it wouldn't approach to where you would want to be. So there's no real good way to value engineer to the level that we would want to get to. If it was, you know, the cost estimate was 5.1 and we need to get to 4.8, yeah, we could start looking at some of those things, some of those components. You know, how do we push those off to 2 years down the road or 3 years down the road? And we could accomplish that, but you know, like I said, to realize that 40%, it gets pretty difficult to do that or to achieve that.
Rubio, on some of the items, for example, some of the utilities, is there any benefit to, for example, coming in with the new underground for, excuse me, the new meter or, you know, setting that new panel and coming in for the new generator, hitting some of those things up front? Or are we still looking at just exorbitant costs that we just probably shouldn't even touch right now?
You mean like do that as a separate project, do that
Yeah.
now? You know,
Some of the infrastructure stuff that would have to be done anyways, that, I mean, because we're still dealing with electrical issues next door. And so maybe we set a new meter that's going to be needed for, I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing ideas out there.
Chip away at it.
Yeah, chipping
Yeah.
away at it.
you know, my guess is that long term you would probably spend more than you would if you were to do it all at one time. certainly, speaking of the generator, that's one of the things that I've been hearing from my electrical engineers is, the generators, they're 8 to 10 months out after you order it. So, yeah, you could order the generator today and if things were looking good, that we thought we were going to do construction in 10 or 11 months, it would just be a line item in the contract to say, we want a new generator, but we bought it. You just have to install it at this point. But yeah, my gut feeling is that by doing it piecemeal, because you're going to be paying today's prices on a lot of that stuff, you're going to be paying mobilization for each one of those projects as opposed to one mobilization for the contractor. Not that any of these would be big projects in and of themselves, but if you're breaking it up into 4 or 5 different little smaller projects, like I said, every contract that you hire, every contractor that you hire, he's going to want, his cut, and a lot of it's going to be based off of today's prices.
The other thing to keep in mind as we talk about phasing it is in order to access the development impact fee funding source, which is where we would ideally fund this from, we have to be providing services for an expanding population. It has to be an expansion of our station. It can't simply be an upgrade to the existing, if we're not accommodating more firefighters, more equipment, then that funding is, that was going to be a challenge to access that funding source.
Yeah.
Expand our population.
I'm sorry.
How do we expand our population?
Well, I'm just talking about the
use of the funds.
The use of the funds, even if the population was expanding, unless you were using it for that particular purpose, you wouldn't be able to access those funds. So, like simple replacement, replacing the generator, for example, couldn't
Couldn't come out
Well,
of
it
that
puts a
fund.
constraint on how we chip away at this
It's gonna
project.
be hard to do it without it being part of it's gotta be related
Part
to the
of a bigger
expansion.
use of the funds. Yeah.
So we do need to finish, I think, right now, we've got this $5.3 million cost estimate for the construction. We need to include these other costs that Rubio mentioned, the permitting and some of the other construction, some of the things, so we have a total project cost. Hopefully we don't continue to suffer major sticker shock as those costs come together. You said you're working on that now, Rubio?
Yeah. So I pretty much got everything I need. So now it's basically just finishing up. And I know that you guys wanted to talk, so I was kind of holding off a little bit on finishing that. But I pretty much have everything I need to compile it all together and present or submit that to you guys.
All right, any other discussion on this topic? Okay, well, thank you, Rubio, for the estimate, and as Director Giardini mentioned, you did a wonderful job detailing it. It's just unfortunately, it's not what I was looking for in the way of an estimate in terms of the dollar amount. But I do like the fact that you were so detailed, and certainly the rendering that's been provided. It's just now, I think, for the board to figure out is how we can achieve this. And I wish things were different, but unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's a good news, bad news type of deal. If you would have started this 6 months earlier, we'd be going out to bid right now. We'd have a set of plans, getting ready to go out to bid, and you'd be hit with this and say, okay, what do we do now? We would be in that situation where, like, yeah, we do have to put it on hold. We know we're going to have to come back in a year and update the plans and all that stuff. So, it's unfortunate, but, I think it came at a good time. You're very early in the development stage of the project that you have not invested additional resources to complete something that you're not going to move forward with for a year or 2 years down the road. So,
Well, at least now we know what we didn't know.
yeah, if there's a silver lining, I think that maybe that's it. But yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Before we do this, I'd like him to be, in case you want to get creative when we talk about item number 3, if he's got a few more minutes, it might be helpful.
Oh, about the
Yeah.
master plan?
Well, there's more to it in here, but yeah.
Okay, all right, so you're able to stay on then?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so then we'll move to our next agenda item, which is the next steps in completing the fire master plan. And so for this, the committee will discuss and based on conceptual fire station expansion plans and cost estimates, if it's recommends moving forward with completing the master plan and adjusting impact fees based on these estimates or exploring other expansion concepts. So is this something Chief Peterson will be speaking to?
Well, I'd like to just address maybe the very tail end of this, if we could, the very last
Exploring
phrase.
other expansion concepts?
Yeah, so when we dealt with the master plan, which later became relabeled the assessment that AP Triton did, there were various concepts that were thrown about. Of course, then when we got Rubio in terms of dealing with this expansion, we got Rubio involved. You know, I think we looked at this from the perspective of the chief had an idea of what could work, and Rubio said, yeah, I think that's $2.5 million kind of thing, and I'm giving you the Reader's Digest version.
Yeah.
And so we focused on that, which is this, right? We focused on that concept, which is this. There are other concepts that exist, and I just want, before you say this is what we're going for, we may not get here in time, is what I'm saying, based on this $5.3 million cost. We have needs that are a little more front and center than 10 and 20 years out. And are there, again, before we just decide that this is it, does the committee, because now's your chance before we've built impact fees based on this estimate and whatnot. Do you want to look at other concepts, and would they even save us any money? I mean, I don't have the answer to that. We talked briefly about, hey, how about this space that we're in right now? If this space was accessible, would it save us money on the renovation or the expansion? There was a concept thrown around about, could the fire department take over the existing district offices, all the space? And would that save then money on renovation and expansion? Of course, we'd have to relocate the district office somehow and pay for that. I mean, we don't have answers to these questions, but given the fact that the cost estimate is, again, swollen so much from what we thought this would be, do you want to revisit those concepts, or do you feel like, hey, all those things, the costs, because obviously construction costs, the $5.3 million budget that we're looking at, or construction cost estimate that we're looking at, isn't related to something super special about what we're doing, but rather the circumstances of the time. And maybe while there might be some savings here, and I'm just speculating, there might be some savings relative to what's proposed, they're not going to be half the cost. I don't know. I mean, I just want to make sure that before we say, yes, we need to keep our, we need to have our plans around this concept. Do you want to revisit any of these other concepts, and might they? And if you do, the purpose would be to do it less expensively, I assume. And is that in the cards? Are we likely to achieve that?
Well, let me ask Chief Peterson, if you were to rank all the improvements that are in this plan, how would you rank it? What would be the one thing, if you had one thing that you could change, what would that be?
You mean as far as the existing idea of
Yeah.
expanding out?
Well, just in terms of,
Like
because there's the clean room that's being added here. There's the bathroom facilities upstairs. Is there one thing that is your biggest pain point? If you could have one thing, what would that be?
Well, it's hard to pin it down to one thing, but essentially it would be that upstairs space, just expanding that, having a little more room, having a commercial or 2 bathrooms. That seems to be our biggest pickup point, especially with female firefighters You know, if by some grace of God, we get the SAFER grant, and now we have 3 on staff for 3 years, you know, having that 3rd bedroom. So there's a kind of a multitude of things that kick in.
Yeah, but it's the living quarters
But it's
that are
the
really,
living quarters are the biggest. We can live with what we're dealing with office space right now. The biggest issue is the living quarters, hands down. The kitchen, things are kind of falling apart. We've had leaks. We've got floor that's damaged up there. We've had to do a new water system upstairs, a new dishwasher, a new refrigerator. Those are appliance things, and then just the actual size and layout of the upstairs is just not conducive to living quarters for a fire station. So yeah, definitely the living quarters.
So 2 ideas, brainstorming.
Yeah.
Do just add living quarters downstairs, and then when you get the money and a bathroom downstairs,
flip flop it.
flip-flop it to some extent. The other thing is, what if you just bought a modular home and brought it in and they live in there? I mean, I
Those
looked
are-
up, I looked
That
up
was,
the
that
price
was a
of those.
thought.
Yeah, those are some of the things that we're thinking of, is like, okay, because now that we know that we're, absent, a plane dropping a big pile of money here, we're a ways away from being able to fund this sort of improvements. How do we deal with the shortcomings for the next 5 or 10 years? And, so some of the things like modular facility, those might end up being interim improvements. They're gonna add to the cost, right? Because
Right.
Yeah, but I think it addresses the need
Sleeping
immediately,
needs, that's what I.
which it sounds like there's an immediate need. Especially to keep, your staff happy.
yeah, I think the biggest drawback is remember when this was done, this is 1996, what you're sitting in, everything in this facility was 1996. So it meant it was probably designed in 93 or 94 or whatever conceptually, and then built in 96. The fire station was not a 24-hour operation. The plan, the thoughts at the time where this was going to be a volunteer station, the long-term plans in the early 2000s were that this would remain a volunteer station and a second station might be a career staff station or vice versa. That was the long-term plans 15 years ago. So we had an ambulance that ran out of here, and at one point I think the county engine ran out of here as well. That's who lived in.
Oh, next door, it
Okay.
had a separate, the county engine had a completely separate facility than this, yeah. But as soon as, that was station 32, as soon as they went away, they went to station 30 and we were independent. But yes, the ambulance, they contracted the upstairs. It went through many iterations of like wall changes. But, as you've probably seen up there, I mean, we've got a window split in half on one wall.
It just was never designed. So the issues, the biggest deficiencies relate to the housing of firefighters overnight. Because that wasn't not the concept. It was like people were gonna respond from home to the station, get in the equipment, go to the scene, come back, and then go back home. And so that's where we see the biggest deficiency is in that area. Coupled with the fact that it's upstairs and we've just got some, space constraints, and we couldn't house 3 people if we wanted to, those kind of things.
Right.
So, and not that that's a real present concern, but nonetheless, those I think are the biggest shortcomings. And so this plan was designed to, give us a build out or last 40 years or something, but not just address the single shortcoming.
But I think some of the concepts that the general manager just brought up is that, we don't have to stay focused on that particular item. Yes, ultimately, staying at this station, that would be fantastic if we had the money to do that. if it drops back to normal construction prices next year, I would say absolutely, let's, ask the board to proceed. But I don't know if that's realistic. In the interim, if we did something in here, now how much are we investing that would take away from that? If we took this room, and I know this used to be an old kitchen in here, so some of those, plumbing and electrical items are still there as far as the utility needs and whatnot. I just don't, we're just spitballing ideas as far as being able to utilize this to expand space, or maybe it's a modular, or maybe we redesign something off the back of the current space itself.
So my question is, how do we get money to be able to afford this? I mean, we get property taxes, we have the CFD fund, and then you charge for your services of reviewing plans. Does that go into the fund for this too? Because to me, it's a how do you generate the money to ever get us to this question? Because what I see what the chief said about moving this in here and changing the kitchen around is you're gonna have piecemeal shit forever that you're just gonna be walking on.
Yeah, and I wasn't thinking that something that would invade this space would be an interim measure. It'd be instead of what we've got, instead of this plan. If you want to, I don't think it's worth the effort of changing. I mean, the more disruption we have, the more costs we have. So the more, if it's an interim measure, if it's only a 5 or 10 year thing, then I'm not inclined to want to do a lot if it's temporary. But if it were a deviation, if it would be an alternate plan that we were pursuing, it still might be years away, but then looking, if it was going to save money, if we were going to go from 5.3 to 4.3 or 3.3, then maybe it's worth looking at. But I don't know if it's achievable.
But my main question is, how do we get money to put into the?
So the capital account, the way we've developed, the way we've collected funds for expansion of services for fire and other district functions is through the Development Impact Fee Program. And so what we would do, if the board ultimately said, no, this is what we want, let's say all this adds up to be $5.5 million. That's the budget for what we want. We want to see what we need in the long term. Then we add to it the cost of the apparatus that was identified in the AP Triton report, the training facilities that need to, we tally all those costs. And so let's say just ballparking, let's say at that point we're at $7.5 million. That's what we need for build out of the fire facilities. We subtract what we have in the bank, which is roughly $2.7 million. So we have now a shortfall of 4.8 million, if my back of the napkin math is working. And then we allocate those costs over the new development that occurs over the next, say, 20 or 25 years. And then we collect those funds over time. That's exactly how we got the $2.7 million that we have now. It was based on a new fire station and new apparatus, a second fire station and new apparatus.
Right, but what?
You're saying, how can we get funds to go into that
Right,
account?
and
How can we increase that and
Right.
accelerate it?
right,
And I think that's your question.
right. And the thing is that we just released 36 water meters. We have a severe drought in California, so we don't know how many more water meters we're going to be releasing. The 36 water meters we just released went to Filipone. He has to let you know what he's going to do with those within a certain amount of time by the release of water meters. Oops, sorry. And so, it's going to be another how many years? Oh, I gotta take this. Save my thought. Hi, this is Pam.
Yeah, so I understand where Director Giardini is going with this. And I don't know that there's any way of accelerating it any more than what is currently in place.
Yeah, I mean, there are other funding options. I mean, the district you can, so your property taxes are unrestricted. You can use them as you wish. Right now, we're dedicating essentially all of them towards towards operations,
Yeah.
staffing and the current needs. If you
And
were
that's
to-
taking it.
That's taking it, right? But if
So
you were
I
to
don't
able
know
to
that
s-
that's an option to
If you were-
reallocate operating costs.
Right, yeah, but those are available to, to you. Obviously, you could spend either Measure A funds, which are again, all used towards operations, but they're not restricted to that. They could be used for expanding facilities and equipment. The CFD funds could also be used for expanding
That's
facilities.
not-
But all of these things are in their infancy and really were tailored or thought towards funding operations. The long-term challenge is going to remain the operations side, right? That's the day in, day out expenses. That is going to remain a challenge. So if you carve out that revenue stream to go towards expanding towards these capital costs, it's just gonna make that a little bit more challenging going forward. But they are available to you. I mean, you could use them for that reason. We could continue to pursue grant funding, those kinds of things. I just think that the one mechanism you have available to you is through the Mitigation Fee Act, which allows you to plan for these expansions and collect funds as new development occurs. But it's a ways away. I mean, it's gonna take I mean, if this is, if we're really needing to raise $4.8 million or something like that, that's a big hurdle.
So I'm just trying to understand this because in my brain, so capital improvement funds are gonna get funded through the Mitigation Fee Act, which means development impact fees, correct?
Yes,
Development impact fees come from new development. New development comes from release of water meters. Besides,
Or
what else-
the-
where else do we get development impact fees of that major amount? I'm sorry.
no, it's
That's
good.
okay, he's fine, he's
Well, I
fine,
just don't,
he's fine.
he shouldn't pee on anything, but I just, because he never has. But anyway.
Well, his house broken.
Yeah.
But so it comes from water fees.
But-
it-
but-
So,
we-
no, I'm not promoting anything,
Sure.
I'm
No, no.
just trying to, so without this, we are never going to increase this. Now, we just released 36 water meters. We released 24 previously. 5 of them went elsewhere. So 40 of them went to, 38 went to Filipone. And 2 went to existing businesses.
Well, do remember, we have about 600 that are out there that are
That are
already.
not connected.
Right?
So even if we
And
release
how
more,
long, excuse me, how long have they been out there and nothing's been done? Sanjay, Woodruff, a whole bunch of people cannot, they're at build out. Sanjay's at build out. How many is he sitting on? 10, 15? He cannot use them on that site. And our code won't let us transfer it. So the moment you say we have 600 out there, they would have used them most likely already if they could have. And so
Well, there's
that's
also-
the
they
thing.
can relinquish them as well, though.
There are.
If they can't use them, they should
There are a number that are on
relinquish.
sites.
The
There
reason
are also
okay,
a lot that are
first
undeveloped property.
First of all, they won't relinquish them because why would you pay 1980 prices for the house? Why would you accept offer on your house of a 1980 price when it was worth?
But it should be viewed as an investment that's going to appreciate.
Okay, then give them their CIP yearly on it. If they bought it for 10,000, they've had it for 20 years, 10 years, give them a CIP on it. Get those people in here, figure out how to sell them, get them in here, brainstorm with them. How do we get you to relinquish your water meters? Because we need this to do this. I mean, am I missing something?
Yeah, well, so,
I mean, if I were a fire department person, I'd be like screaming my head off at the community going, hey, get these guys in here. Because we want a fire station and we want a truck. And isn't that what all we want? So why do we keep not asking those people,
So-
what will they need?
so,
come in and
so
pay
my
back?
question to you is, obviously, you know a number of these folks who are hanging on to their water. So what is the reason why they're doing that? Do you know?
Because they don't want to buy something back at a 1980 price that is worth way more now. That's why.
But if they're
And they're not, and first of all, let's say he paid $10,000 for them. Then he's gonna sell them back and we're gonna charge $1,000 for processing it,
500.
500, so he's getting $9,500 back. He's being charged a fee to turn in, to relinquish his thing. And then he's lost all that interest for all those years. He's not getting any CPI on it. I mean, we're doing it to the advantage of TCSD. I understand that. That's what I'm supposed to be a proponent for. But the thing is, it's like, you can't sell a used 1980 VW if you're gonna ask 2022 prices for it. Nobody's gonna buy it from you. So like, figure out some way, because we need this to get to here.
So
So
should
I just have, since Rubio's on the,
Yeah.
I don't think he needs to be a part of our
No,
bigger issues, but I didn't know if you wanted to think about other concepts other than this plan, since Rubio's here, he's available, we kind of brainstorm with you on those concepts. If we want to move on and we're happy with this plan, then I think we can let Rubio go, because I don't. he
right,
probably
no,
doesn't
I
want to-
agree. Rubio can't solve this, but it's any plan, even an alternate plan, still brings us back to this scenario. I mean, the thing is, we don't have the funding unless we do something for $10,000. I mean, first of all, I think you need a fire engine before we need both. We need both.
But, and again, keep in mind, my recommended priority still stands with the committee and the board, is that, yes, fire engine number 1, station expansion number 2.
Mhm.
And we're looking at over $900,000 for, and I think you're trying to, by getting we should let Rubio go first.
Yeah.
So is there any other concepts you want to talk about in terms of the station
No,
expansion?
I think I've heard from Chief Peterson that, your priority is the living quarters in terms of any kind of expansion.
100%.
And so I think, and Director Giardini, in terms of having modulars, maybe that's an option. I don't know what that cost would be, but yeah, I do like this plan though.
Yeah.
But it's, can we do a portion of this? Can we do, I don't know, but certainly I think cost is gonna be a big consideration.
Yeah, it doesn't even sound like we can do a portion of it right now.
Well, I'm wondering if you leave the downstairs part that's pushed out, that's just a shell. And you just do the upstairs.
And I think Rubio touched on that. I think if we got down to, if our problem was $500,000 and not 3 million, we could probably talk about ways to do multiple phase 1A, 1B, those kind of things, and not, not build out the downstairs, not finish it, that kind of thing. Those could be done, but it's not gonna get us back into the ballpark based on the cost estimates we're looking at today. But you could, I think the option remains, but it's something that's gonna save us in the order of 10% perhaps, not the 40 or 50% that we need in order to move forward in the shorter term.
Okay, I don't know that there's any other option in terms of,
Well, I think there is the option of looking at modulars.
Yeah, no, I
yeah,
think so.
we
In more
can
of
do that
it,
outside with Rubio.
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see, yeah.
So I'm just saying if there's any other discussion that would be pertinent to his participation.
Right,
Um,
sorry.
So, and with that, I don't think there really is.
And Rubio, you use Toma Electric, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because I'm only thinking from the aspect if we do plug in a modular, we're at about capacity of what our electrical limitations are. Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Because we're popping breakers over here right now.
Yeah. So you would still be upgrading electrical
Yeah,
That would
systems
need
and
to be done
capacity.
in addition to the modulars.
So that could be done in a, if, so if we were gonna do an I think what I think I'm hearing is you wanna consider some of the interim solutions. They don't replace the long-term plan,
No,
they just bide some time. What we would do in that case is identify what we would need to run that stuff, and we make a one-time improvement that would not only run the interim, but the permanent, so you don't have to do it twice.
Correct.
So
That's, that's kind of where I was going earlier.
yeah. Okay,
And that would be related to expansion, because we'd be adding square footage and
which we could use those
things like
funds
that,
for.
right?
Okay, anything else then? Okay, Rubio, thank you very
Thank you
much
very
for participating this morning. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Anything else related to the master plan that you want to
So it
address?
sounds like, maybe what we ought to do is, so we're still waiting on some cost components to come from Rubio. I mean, this isn't again, I think part of what I'm doing is just like the sticker shock is that it's not settled, it's not setting yet. And so I guess I have to look at this and go, when I saw the 5.3 number, it was like, wow, it's a game changer. And now really it's not 5.3, it's a bigger number because we're missing some costs. So we probably need to come back to you once we have all those tallied. And then if you want, I think one of the things you're talking about now is if we go through the traditional process of trying to develop a plan to collect these funds, it's gonna be years before we're here. And that's optimistic. Maybe what you're saying is, look, we see some more immediate needs. Develop an interim plan,
Mhm.
and let's add this to this budget.
Well, because this plan to me is like, this is 5-10 years out to get to this dollar amount. And you're right, it's not even the total dollar amount. So, and it sounds like you can't wait 5 or 10 years with your current living quarters. I mean, so there's an immediate need that needs to be addressed. And that's part of having a 24/7 staff.
Correct.
So I think that we do need that interim plan, and whether or not it's the modulars or something else, I think we need to look at that.
Okay, so I'm gonna go buy a house. I don't go and pick out the house and then figure out how I'm gonna fund it. I figure out my finances first, and then I go see what I can afford. So we're spending money on developing an interim plan when we have no idea how we're gonna get there.
Well, using that analogy, I would like a house, but I can't afford a house, so I'm gonna end up in a condo
Right.
until I can afford
But
the
how-
house.
Right. But how are we affording the condo?
Well, we do have funds, and I think it's a cost that we don't know yet. So I think we need to explore what's that interim solution. So, because we can't keep, to me, we can't keep those living quarters, and I don't know if you've been up there
Oh,
recently.
yeah, I was
I was
there,
up there
not recently.
last weekend or a week ago, Saturday.
That's right.
And I was surprised and went, oh my God, I hate to say this, but it's a dump up there. I mean,
It
it
is.
needs, I mean, there's a place where it's like plywood on the floor. I mean, so it's one of those things where I think we do have to come up with an interim solution. What that is, I don't know. Is it
So,
modulars?
I don't think we have to spend a lot of money to come up with the plan. Obviously, it would cost money to implement, but I think we don't need to go to an architect or something like that. We could figure out what space we have, what's the cost of a modular unit or something, if that's the direction we want to look at. And what's it take to serve that and develop a budget for that program without having to spend consulting money.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we could do that internally. But I do want to just, we have to, I think your logic, board member Giardini is ideal, right? If you first work out what is your budget before it doesn't make any sense to go shopping if you don't know what your budget is. You only create expectations without being able to ever meet them. However, the Mitigation Fee Act requires us to develop fees based on our projected costs. So we have to invest some money to know what these costs are likely going to be that we can then attribute towards. We couldn't just say, we're going to build a $3 million fire station. You know, there has to be based on some sort of nexus. So I think the work that we're doing with Rubio right now is giving us that tool. We now have defensible, cost estimates. I mean, they were prepared, right? You know, we don't like the information, but if we were to do this today, this is what he's saying it's gonna cost. I'm still sort of shocked by that, because when I looked at these plans, I go, there's just no way this is $5 million.
I'm wondering, what's
But
it,
I-
what Cal Fire spend
Oh,
on
like
that?
$12 million, I think.
$12 million for that station?
Well, yeah, and the interesting part to me is,
Rocks out front.
yeah, the interesting part to me is, you know, my son's in development and he's a project manager for San Luis Ranch, and we had this discussion yesterday. And they indicated he didn't think costs were going up proportionally by this percentage. They haven't seen those impacts yet. And so whether this is an inflated and very, you know, conservative estimate, I don't know. If we did a bid out locally, would it be lower? Probably not by 40 or 50%, no. So I guess what, you know, the only option on this is to wait and see if we're gonna go forward with this new expansion, is to wait and see what happens in next year or the year after with these costs of construction. In the interim, I don't know if, me personally, I would have a problem spending money doing something temporary, as the general manager said, interior here or something like that, where if we did a modular, we could probably recoup some cost off that if we did a modular and set up our electrical in such a way that it did benefit for what we're going to do long term in the future. That way, we're not really incurring a whole big loss with regards to the modular or something
Well, we
like
would
that.
at least have another estimate on an alternative and an estimate that we could compare against this.
Well, except for the modular concept, I think that what I had in mind is it's a 5 or 10 year solution while we're waiting to do this, as
Exactly,
opposed to,
still,
and this would still be what we based our
But we would,
long-term plan
but
on.
we would be using some of those capital funds to do that. And at least, and it's also, I think we have to have an alternative plan, because this is so unrealistic. I mean, this is just, I don't even see this being achievable in anything short of 10 years.
Well, and in 10 years, our fire department fund goes down, that's negative, according to the recent budget,
It would be what?
negative.
The financial model.
Yeah.
The financial
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
So, you know, so you're saying this isn't realistic for 5 to 10 years. We're negative in 10
Some
years.
years, which is,
And we're not releasing water meters most likely for a long time.
yeah.
So we're in a catch-22.
Well, I mean, I think, yeah, I just don't think this is realistic. on any
Well, and the
level.
numbers are shocking.
Yeah.
But I don't know that other concepts. I think there are other concepts are worth looking at if they're gonna create savings against the total dollars. And that's why I mentioned, do we wanna revisit the concept of, you know, taking over the space? But then I look and see, I say, okay, wait a second, they're allocating,
1.1.
yeah, $500 and some a square foot for remodel
Yeah.
essentially. So if we remodel, that might cut the cost in
Well,
half.
we're
but then I
remodeling
need to
an
replace all the
existing
space.
But we've got.
Well, then
the
I have,
space.
and then I have to redo all, I have to move this
Yeah,
somewhere
so
else.
I don't even think that's a solution either, because then where would our boardroom be?
Well,
Well, we could do the community center,
The boardroom is,
but we put in all this equipment here.
Well, and that can be transferred. I mean, all of that type of stuff, but again, I think it goes back to what the general manager is saying is how do we then make the district whole in a district office?
we'd have to rebuild that.
Yeah.
And while the cost wouldn't be as high on a per square foot basis, because it's not an essential facility, it would need to be 2 floors, those kind of things. You're not gonna, it's unlikely to, no, this is just off the back, you know, it's unlikely to create, it's not gonna be half price.
Yeah.
Right? Because we've already got a dollar figure now for the remodeling or what he calls, or what's being labeled as the renovation, $539 a square foot for renovating. And, you know, we'd have to invest similar amount of money to what we just did to get a detailed price estimate on the alternate. The issue is, if we gave up this room and the district office, maybe there'd be no reason to do the addition.
Correct.
And it'd be all renovation. But now, in addition to renovating this space of whatever it costs, we have to replace at least the district office component.
And where'd that be?
We'd have to buy property or, you know, build a building and those kind of things.
Which we're building a building, it'd be.
I think you'd save a little bit, but I don't know, I don't think it moves the needle. I don't think you're
And
gonna
I don't
save
think it does either.
25% or 50%.
We could probably do this and make it all fire department and do what we need to do in here for what we have. You know, cost wise, but again, we're still out. Where does the district office now go? And there's no money left from the fire department
Yeah.
capital fees to make that whole.
Yeah, yeah, I think we're just shifting the cost from, you know, the right hand to the left hand. So,
I mean, but I wanted, before we just, if this concept is the long-term plan, then we can work towards it. I mean, I think it's gonna be, there's some real obstacles here, but we can work towards it. But now is the time, if you say, you know what, we like the plan, but we were never just thrilled with it. And now that we see how much it's gonna cost, I wanna look at something else. Now's your chance to do that.
yeah.
But I mean, when we actually boil it down to it, I mean, maybe that's something that the committee would want to look at, is do a cost estimate on what it would take to renovate this whole area. That way we're not increasing square footage. We're back down to, and maybe in a year it drops back down to 300.
Well, when you say this whole area, you're talking about all of the
Yeah,
district
the district office
office space.
and then maybe we do an addition to the community center, or I'm just, again, spitballing ideas here. That would be the new district office, or I don't even know where we have other property, but
Creekside. The Creekside
no, that's a
property.
little
Yeah, out of the way.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, so we could, I don't know that it's gonna create a significant savings and, you know, so, but that's something that you could look at, or you could look at just this area, or, you know, whatever. This room, I think, could be replaced at the community center. It would be a little bit less convenient. It would not be not doable. Plenty of boards and councils meet in facilities that are not attached to City Hall or the district office. So it's doable, but it would be inconvenient. You know, so that's a factor. But this space in and of itself doesn't replace the needs for this addition, right? I mean, it's a, you know, it wouldn't give us everything that we need. So, but now, again, now is still, if you like this concept, I mean, it doesn't mean that you're gonna ultimately build this, because maybe something better comes along over time.
The concept I like, the price tag I don't.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm not sure, based on how the estimates were generated, that we're gonna find another concept that gives us the space that this one does at a significant savings. Now, again, maybe renovating all of this space for firewood, and but we'd have to develop a new plan. It's just, you know, $1 million isn't what it once was, right? I mean, you think about, okay, what's it cost to replace the district office? Well, kind of a not so fancy house in Templeton is $1 million,
Right.
not a commercial building. I mean, that's.
So, question, a long time ago, and I think even in the most recent, before the fire plan came out, you were being interviewed, wasn't there some advantage to actually moving the fire station closer to the freeway, that they kept looking at lots closer to the freeway because this was inconvenient as far as response time? No?
no, the response times are adequate
Mhm.
here. The concept for the other station and station location was to have something on the other side of the freeway
Right.
in the event that we had an earthquake and we lost access.
Access.
Oh, I
Yeah.
see.
We actually have conflicting recommendations. The AP Triton Works said the location here is okay.
Right, I remember that.
But previous
But I-
studies said the station should be relocated.
Relocated. I was just wondering why go through expanding the whole fire station here if there was actually a need to.
Well, I'm on your camp there, but the chief and the AP Triton said this is a okay location. I think part of the reason why, though, was related to the investment that already exists. You know, so if you had to bulldoze it, it wouldn't make sense to meet it.
No.
You put it in the ideal spot, right? You put it, if you're gonna spend that kind of money, you put it in the perfect location. This isn't the perfect location,
Right, okay.
but it's not maybe statistically deficient.
The only thing that potentially could skew those results is if we annexed in a larger area and it became busier and all of a sudden our response times are significantly longer to an
Geographically
an
on the other
annexed,
side.
yeah, correct, an annexed area that would create a problem for us.
I think our only annex and our sphere of influence is only residential, it's not commercial though, right?
Yeah, you know, we have a few pockets kind of around the edges of
Oh, well,
town
we
that are
don't
this
get tax base off of
sphere
that.
of influence.
Retail sales.
So yeah, but I mean, I think if we were to develop a cost, I mean, the reality is there's still some advantages of doing this expansion as opposed to building. I mean, if we were to budget a brand new station with the square footage that this facility provides ultimately, the cost is gonna be more than $5.3 million. And we have to buy land. So you're looking at, you know, I don't know, maybe it's $10 million. I mean, I think the state ended up spending like 12.5 million up on Station 30. They already own the land.
And I mean, for example, this was several years ago now, but Atascadero Station 1 was looking at it, having to do something, and ultimately the fire chief, the 2 battalion chiefs, myself and Bill White, and the admin assistant went up to City Hall to give more space.
Mhm.
And that kind of took the burden off of what was taking place at Station 1. But as we were looking into that, an expansion of an apparatus bay and converting the space of the existing station there at that time was right about $10 million. And that was just adding a very modest apparatus, 4-bay apparatus bay. You know, and then remodeling the interior of the station.
So yeah, these numbers are pretty staggering.
And I don't see costs going down anytime soon. So, I mean, and it's like he was saying, is the war in Ukraine has caused gas prices to skyrocket. And that's not gonna likely be resolved anytime soon. And that means everything that has to be shipped has gotta cost more. And there's probably a number of materials that are being shipped, which is using gas, which is gonna, you know, which is why I think probably it's skyrocketed. But that's not likely gonna change. But I think, I think, quite frankly, I think it's just gonna go on the shelf. But I think we do have to look at how do we fix the living arrangements.
So do you then, would the committee then like us to, like, again, finalize this budget estimate for the expansion?
Finalize it
And
because I
then
think
come
it
back
would
with
be,
an interim,
yes,
some interim solutions that you could look at in terms of, you know, maybe improving on some of the most significant shortcomings that we have today that would allow the station to continue to function, you know, while we're building up funds to do the ultimate expansion.
yeah, I think we need to know what the real cost is, and so even as shocking as the 5.3 is, it's not inclusive of all the costs. And it's like Director Dardini mentioned, it doesn't even include the furnishings.
Well, and
And the permits, you know.
We do have, I mean, I don't know that we'd be in the $50,000 range, because we do have a lot of the furnishings, and you know, a majority of the furnishings can be reused.
You have some of them, but
Yeah, we would be looking at some additional bunks, those types of things and
but
cabinets.
it's still added cost.
Yeah, absolutely,
Um,
probably, you know, in the neighborhood of $25,000, $30,000, but yeah.
right, but your road fee, I just looked it up, 2 years ago, so I don't have the current, with the CPI is 8,900 per peak hour trip, so you're gonna have $50,000-$60,000 probably in road fees there. So
Yeah.
it's not good news.
No, it's I mean, well, that's again why we kind of wanted you to come in on short notice, just because we felt like this was such a surprising figure that it's, you know, these costs are always there's always gonna be things in here that you didn't think of initially, but when we're starting out with 5.3 instead of 2.2 to 2.5.
And we know it's not
Can I ask a
inclusive of
question?
everything.
So we're gonna spend money to have Rubio finish out the cost estimate. We already know it's over budget, so what's the purpose of spending the money to have him do that? Because you want to base your impact fees off of it?
We need a defensible nexus to base the impact fees on.
But if.
I think we've already spent the money.
We have,
Yeah.
he's just finishing what's in his contract.
Oh, okay.
It's not new work. We're not giving him new work, and we're not moving forward with developing the phase 2 of his work. It's just completing his project was to work with us to develop a conceptual plan and then develop cost estimates for it. And so. he's gonna
There was
finish
a
that.
second, there was a second phase to his, which was the construction documents, and we haven't,
No, there's no
authorized
second,
that
yeah.
Yeah.
no,
so.
Right.
Okay, all right, so
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 we'll
you have
work
your
on-
direction then
Yeah,
in
we'll
terms
work on
of
the interim measures. We'll finish this up.
estimate?
And then, I think we need to regroup at that point, before this goes back to I mean, obviously the board's gonna get the minutes and one of you probably should report tomorrow night that, wow, the estimates came in and this is what we're facing. And we're working on other, not other options, but, other solutions, I suppose. Yeah, I think until we have a comprehensive budget to go with the other master plan components for these build out items, the station expansion, the apparatus and whatnot, then we need all those things to be done before we can move forward with essentially completing the master plan and updating the impact fees.
Okay,
Now, I don't know I'll go through the updated costs from Rubio. We'll make sure we've included impact fees and likely permitting costs and the things that are significant. We can include a budget for furnishings and things like that. So we have something that is more reflective of what the actual costs would be. But again, as far as timing wise, this is a long way from this number's a lot bigger than we thought it would be just 3-4 months ago. Now, I guess I'm not surprised that it got bigger, but to the
Extent that it did, yeah.
it virtually doubled, or nearly doubled in price. Now, I'm hopeful that prices will come down, but again, I think they still need to level off.
Yeah.
Before we can even think that they would
Well, and I
drop.
think the per square foot cost is kind of where he was doing his estimates, and your standard commercial per square foot costs were $450 to $500. And that's where his initial estimates came from. To see them jump, for example, my son indicated $250 to $300 per square foot on residential.
On residential,
Yeah.
yeah.
And now it's at $400. So that's not a 50% increase like we've seen. But it's something that will cause developers to pause and go, oh, okay, should I start this next phase? Or wait for that cooling off period. His cost estimators had indicated they anticipated cooling off in a year. I don't know what that means for commercial, but residential, they
I
anticipate.
think there's a lot of dynamics at play here. It's not just one thing that's driving the prices to go up.
Oh,
There's a
absolutely.
lot of dynamics. And I think until all of those kind of resolve themselves, I think that we're gonna still have big ticket item. So, but yeah, I think I do want to move on because I'm looking at the clock here. It's 10 o'clock and we've got a number of things to go through. But I think in terms of coming up with an alternative plan, completing the cost estimate, I think that would help. And certainly I can report out the board meeting tomorrow night that we've got the renderings. And we have the estimate, and we're kind of, next step is to look at an alternative. And then
Yeah, no, when we
finalize
say
those
alternative, I think we're
estimates.
talking about
in-
interim measure.
interim.
As opposed to an
Interim
alternative to the.
Yeah, an interim solution, until we can achieve this one. Yeah, so, okay, anything else on that topic
No, I think
before we
that's
move
sufficient.
on?
Let me look here for a second.
So again, we are ruling out the potential and we shouldn't waste any additional time on looking at taking over this entire building or seeing what those costs
Well,
could
instead of this
potentially be.
entire building, how many rooms could you get in here, and you have a bathroom right there. So.
Well, they would still need a bathroom, so we would have to figure out something. Yeah, I don't know what it would look like.
I mean, but you
Honestly,
could-
that,
you could put two bedrooms in here.
oh, easily.
There are three, and that the females could use the bathroom. That's right through that.
Well,
door
we can,
there.
except for these restrooms have showers and things like,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. Do they have to shower?
After 48 hours, I would hope so.
Yeah,
There's
well,
a hose outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Outside shower.
All right, let's move on. Engine 7195, the repair status.
okay. So essentially what I've just done here is gone through and highlighted what has taken place currently with the engine. So they have gone through and replaced the transmission, which has resolved the pump issue.
Okay,
So we're looking good there so far. The intake ball valves, number 4, replace and upgrade the defective pump shift, primer and drain. 5, replace the drain handles, those types of small things, rework the passenger side valves. Remove and repair body ladder rack. That was a little more significant than they thought. The current or the previous company did not do a great job on the install of that. Added our water level gauge. So a lot of the pump stuff has been taken care of with regards to the engine.
so this
Now-
is the laundry list of all of the repairs.
This was the laundry list of all the repairs. We have come across a few others. As they, again, we anticipated, they dig into things and they find more stuff. And so I've got a list running on that will probably have to come back. I think they're small enough that we may be able to absorb some of this, because some of those costs were, I think, a little bit less, but we'll see what it shakes out with at the end.
So only the items that are highlighted have.
Are the
been
completed items, correct?
The other ones, are they still?
So
in-
the engine is back in
Yeah,
again now, and it's been in there for a week.
In the shop.
In the shop.
Yeah.
Yep, and so remove and replace the old Sigtronics headset system, that's in the works. Replace cab door hinges, so the doors don't open anymore, that's in the works. Replace upper cab door and windows. One thing we did find out with this is Fire Trucks Unlimited installed those windows upside down. So that apparently was a result of some of the leaking into the cab area that was taking place.
So they're fixing that for free, I'm assuming.
This is not Fire Trucks Unlimited that's
No.
doing it, and we're well
Yeah.
past the
It's
warranty.
under past the warranty. This is the repair that's, but you know, at least it's being fixed.
Correct. The nose, excuse me, the nose cone, and the new headlights grill, that's the last item. I do have a couple of photos of that. So
Oh,
that's
okay.
kind of the new front nose cone that will be installed, will solve our headlight issues. And now we won't have an issue replacing a headlight if it goes out.
So, how much, how long is it gonna take for all these repairs?
3 more weeks.
3 more weeks.
Yep.
Okay, and then we've got another truck on loan.
We actually borrowed the sister engine to that from the city of Paso Robles.
Okay,
So we're using that for right now. The agreement, we've added our insurance to it, have an agreement with them. And in the agreement, if they have a situation where they have a couple of engines go down, that is their backup engine. So every department has a backup engine, which is what I've been arguing for a while. Their backup engine, if they have some go down, we lose that. Now we're gonna have to ask either an OES or a
Someone
Tascadero
else.
or somebody else to borrow an engine. So, yeah, I think that's it on 7195, unless you have any questions.
all right, well, no, I mean, the total was 62,000 and some
Correct.
change, which is a heck of a lot cheaper than the new fire truck.
Well,
And
this-
hopefully this will resolve all of the issues that you've had with that truck.
Yeah, I mean, but keep in mind, this isn't replacing, the need for that new fire truck.
I'm not saying it
Yeah.
does. I just know that the $1 million price tag, we looked at that every different which way. And that was a little difficult to try and see where we could afford that. So, hopefully it will resolve all of the issues that you've had with 7195 until some point in time in the future where we can afford a new engine.
I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, any comments, questions? Okay, thank you for that update. And then fire department staffing. So with the current part-time staffing, I understand that you've got some loss in staff as a result of,
Yeah, so we've lost 5 now again as the fire season approaches. And there's a couple of ways that I was looking at this. One was doing another hiring in June. And as I talked to the general manager, we're looking at costs of, what did we come up with, $3,000-ish per person to bring them on board. And so with a minor scheduling or modification to how we're assigning people's shifts, essentially I could wind up with only having 10 reserves total. 3 on staff that would be what we will call permanent part-time. And they would actually be assigned shifts. So currently the daytime firefighters work 12-hour shifts. And what I would actually do is assign 3 of them to shift rotations. So it would look something like, whoa, that didn't do what I wanted it to do. What happened here? I lost my Saturday. X out of what? Oh, you know what? The view,
Yeah, go to view, you have to go to layout, change it to
yeah,
landscape.
yeah. I can't see that far.
I'm glad I'm not the only one.
Why isn't it letting me go to landscape?
You have to go to view.
Yeah, I'm in view.
Oh, you're in view. Oh,
This
sorry.
this isn't Microsoft Word, is it? It's WordPad.
No.
Oh,
Okay, so anyhow, essentially what would happen here, and we can look at C shift, for example. So Captain Goldblum, the full-time captain, what we'd have is driver operators. And the driver operator, we would assign them shifts also, where these would be permanent part-time people. Instead of them signing up for a shift, they would be scheduled a shift. And we would have one that would work at 24, which would be our driver operator. And they would work 1 on, 5 days off. This would still keep them well under the hours of the required part-time. And then the daytime firefighters, the 12 hours, they would actually be assigned to shifts. So one would work 2 days in a row, 12 hours a day, and then another one, and then another one. So that's essentially the hypothetical model I'm looking at there. It would still, this is going to be interesting.
And you're able to have that schedule despite the fact that you've lost these 5 firefighters?
So I'm gonna have an all-staff meeting on June 9th. I've asked a few people who have been our more consistent signups if they'd be interested in something like that, and they have acknowledged they would. So it gives them a more consistent schedule. Correct. Yeah. Even though it's part-time, they know how to work their other jobs to try and offset. And this one's not gonna open, so that's essentially it. That's one of my ideas to try and solve this staffing issue, still be able to go out of county. Because all the people that have indicated they would be available for these shifts have also indicated that they could go out of county on a moment's notice. And then we would have 3 reserve firefighters and about 4 reserve driver operators still on the books, but they wouldn't sign up for shifts. They would just be available for those people who are in the assigned shifts to be able to call and go, hey, I can't work this day. Can you fill in for me this day? And then we would take those folks and do some training with them probably about every 2 weeks to keep their skills up. So that's the concept right now.
And then what about recruiting for those 5 firefighters that you've lost? Are you recruiting for,
No, we currently have the people we need to fill the spots we have.
you're not anticipating any more loss of firefighters?
If I can't fill the spots, especially the firefighter spots, then we'll do a recruitment for that in particular. And yeah, then I'll look to try and fill a couple of those, but it's kind of going away from the hire as many as you can. And I think the problem that we've been seeing lately is regardless of what we pay them, if one shift per month is not enough of incentive, we hire, to where we have 30 is not an incentive to keep people here and interested. This layout or shift
Gives them more.
model
what they
gives them a
can-
little more routine and consistency to where they're a little more interested in going, okay, yeah, I can do this and offset my income by something else. If one of these folks leave, we're gonna have a backup of folks that would hopefully be interested to fill that spot, and that's those reserve spots. So, yeah.
Okay. Questions?
No, I'm good. I want to appreciate the fact that you are saving $3,000 instead of going out per person. As you mentioned at the very beginning, to train somebody, you said we figured it would cost $3,000. So you found out a solution without costing the department extra money. So I appreciate that.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you for that update. Let's move to hazmat incident. So apparently we had a hazmat
Yeah,
incident.
this is just a little update. Oh my gosh, this isn't gonna load either.
Was that
My
at the
computer-
Encore
my
building?
computer still doesn't.
Because it was all San Luis Obispo fire trucks there.
Well, I had a slideshow that I was gonna show you, but essentially what happened was, not this last Sunday, but it was the 7th. we got called out for a pink substance leaking from the ceiling of 1310 Las Tablas, the DaVita Dialysis Center. And when 7195 Captain Wall arrived on scene, they walked in and they were escorting all the dialysis patients out into the lawn area. As we arrived on scene, he walked in. They had kind of an ammonia smell hit them. At that point, they backed out. They called for myself and a hazmat assessment team. I showed up, took command. The assessment team got on scene. We went in and did what was called a recon entry. At that point, we determined what the actual product was. And it was a anti-corrosion chemical that is corrosive, that they introduce into the boiler system. And it's a 4-inch pipe that runs throughout the entire building, full of water that they add this chemical to. So it's highly diluted. And one of the seals broke and started spilling into that lower floor. The problem is that system is a loop system. It has no shutoffs. There's no, auxiliary drains or anything like that. And so it was expelling probably about 200 gallons is what we estimated into the structure itself. So we went back in after determining what it was and tried to seal it and was successful, sealed it off. We were there for approximately 3 or 4 hours. I contacted the general manager because of the environmental health component to it. And there was actually floor drains in the facility that go into our sewer system. So Justin Black, our utilities manager, wound up talking with them, and you talked with them also, correct?
Yeah, about because we believe this fluid entered our wastewater system, but by the time we knew that, it was essentially already at the wastewater plant. It had been about 3 hours since the leak occurred. So we haven't found any problems with the plant or the facilities that the chemical entered. It's supposed to be a chemical that actually stabilizes the water.
Right.
So it's very unlikely in its diluted state that it would cause us any trouble.
Yeah. And it was in probably about 1,000 gallons worth of water that was treated with this material. It's obviously not something you want to take a shower in. So we had guys in full, what are called level B suits, go in and actually do the repair. And then DaVita is getting billed for all of the materials and the time on that call.
And that's the dialysis center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct. It'll probably actually be the building owner, because dialysis just
Leasing.
rents that
Yeah.
portion of it. So as soon as I get the bill from the hazmat team, I'm gonna add our time into it, and then we'll go
So
from
is
there.
the hazmat team the San Luis Obispo?
The regional team.
Yeah, because it just so happens, we went to my husband's office and there was all the San Luis Obispo's fire trucks all around, and I knew something was up, but I didn't, what was funny is I didn't see a Templeton fire truck, but that was on Saturday, not on Friday.
This happened on a Saturday.
It was Saturday.
late
It was Saturday.
It was
Saturday
Saturday,
afternoon and early evening.
Yeah. So the only reason that other San Luis, our engine was parked over on the other side.
Well, I'm sure you
Yeah.
guys were there, I just didn't see it.
And the hazmat rig, it says San Luis Obispo Regional Hazmat Team.
Oh,
So, yeah.
I figured something bad had gone on.
As it turns out, it wasn't, so nobody got hurt, no injuries. It it's just an unusual call. And obviously it's gonna be expensive to fix for the building,
Yeah,
but it wasn't a bad outcome in terms of
correct.
injuries and such.
Well, certainly any kind of chemicals going into our wastewater.
The other aspect that I wanted to show you on this was, and kind of leads into one of the later aspects is, I had a couple things on here that just aren't coming up for some reason. With not plugging my computer in, it's not showing up. The fact that we had chemicals in there that we were not aware of.
Wow.
And large quantities. So we're talking 100-gallon vats of acids in one of the room adjacent to where they do the treatment for the dialysis patients. They use that in the process to clean the blood. It was rather alarming to me that they're using these diluted acids to clean blood that they put back into people, but that's the process. But they're large quantities in there, and there wasn't the necessary placarding, so that kind of brought me to that next component of just really enhancing and beefing up our inspection program. So Captain Wall and I had conversations about we are now going to start scheduling the routine inspections. We were focusing on just the schools and the mandatory inspections, which are the apartments, the hotels, the care facilities, those types of things. But you know, with this type of eye opener, we have to start the scheduling process to get our engine company out there and start doing these standard business inspections also, because we're seeing a lot of deficiencies in what should be there. The door leading to this this chemical room, they're required to have what's called a 704 placard. Didn't have one. So.
And are these chemicals flammable?
No, but they're corrosive.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And toxic.
Yeah, the big issue is the introduction of chemicals that mix with another chemical.
Yeah,
Then you could have
Yeah.
A reaction.
the reaction. Okay. All right, well, it sounds like the positive is at least an awareness that there needs to be probably more done in the way of inspections. So,
Correct. Let me try to plug it over there.
okay, anything else on the hazmat?
Nothing on that one, no.
Okay, so billing for responses. This is the first responder fee.
Correct. And I had some information on that. Let's see if this comes up. No. So essentially, the information I've gotten so far on that first responder fee is we're gonna need legal to look at it to see if we're actually even eligible to do something like that. The paramedic programs that take place in, for example, Santa Rosa, Santa Clara, there's a few other Southern California departments that bill have all been from the paramedic end of things. We currently have a contract with San Luis Ambulance called APOC, Ambulance Performance Objective Commission. They put together kind of a cost estimating for departments on how we save time for the ambulance, because they're required a certain performance standard to get on scene. So essentially what's happening is instead of putting ambulances, 2 in every community or something, there's one in Atascadero, there's one here, there's one in Paso Robles, and then they have a day car in each Atascadero and Paso Robles. Those are not 24-hour staffed. But at points, all 5 of those units are busy. And what will happen is when the fire department responds to a particular incident, we stop the clock for them. And so they compensate us for stopping that clock. That's part of that ambulance performance APOC money that we get back from San Luis Ambulance. So the thought is, well, because you're receiving that, you can't really bill for these first responder fees. So I think we need somebody to
Look at that.
look at that and see whether that's actually legal. In the government code section, the way I read it is we definitely can, but with this APOC money we're receiving, that might be it. So I just don't know.
Well, and I think, what I envision too is that this would be limited to those people who are coming into the area
Mhm.
who don't live here.
Transient occupancies.
And yeah, transient population, and a way of getting some funds to the fire department. So yeah, I think it would be worthwhile, because I had a discussion with, who was the former fire chief in Paso Robles, Ken Johnson, and he, because of the arrangement with the ambulance companies, he didn't think that we would be able to do first responder, but I think it's worthwhile in having legal take a look at it.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like we're down to looking for every nickel and dime we can. And if there's some ability to recover and recoup some of this. And also looking at, I know ambulances will charge for transporting a patient, but it's who's caring for that patient before they're being transported. And in many cases, it is us.
Yeah.
And if it's a car accident, then there should be an insurance company that you're able to bill to.
Well, and to that point, there are a lot of times where we get what are called public service assists that the ambulance isn't even dispatched to for transient, occupants or transient residents that don't live in the community. Things like, helping a person back into their car that has fallen over at one of the parking lots of the doctor's offices, or somebody's got a lockout where they're in a parking lot of a bank and they've locked their child in a car, and we go in because it's a hot day, that type of thing. Those types of things, we can bill insurance companies and that type of stuff for, but yeah.
And I know there's an administrator in San Diego, a third-party administrator that, when I looked at them, they have all these different softwares that are used by the fire department. I don't know if any of those are what we use, but it looked like from that aspect, it would be fairly easy to just plug in and play and allow that third party to do that. And I know when I looked at this, a number of the other agencies, they did have a resolution where their board basically said, here's the parameters in which we're going to pursue the first responder fee. So there were some situations where they would not do it. If the person was a resident and was in need of medical assistance, no. If they were Medicare, because Medicare doesn't pay or cover first responder fees. So they set some parameters so that residents would not get this additional charge. So I think we can do something similar, but yeah, so hopefully it's something we're able to do. But I think we definitely need to look at any and all avenues for increasing some revenue.
Yeah.
Going into our fire department.
So I have a question, Deborah, on the person you talked to, did you ask them their collection ratio?
No, I just looked at third party, so it didn't even go that far. So, yeah, so, but if we look at car accidents, I mean, we should be able to bill directly the insurance company and not the individual. But there's certain parameters that we would have to define in terms of saying, these are the folks that we would bill, these are the folks that we would exclude.
Right, I'm just wondering what their collection ratio was, if whether or not people actually paid it.
Yeah. Well, and I think we would have to negotiate some kinds of terms and conditions with the third party administrator too, to say what percent do they retain.
Right.
So, I think there's still a lot more that needs to be explored.
Yeah.
Before we say, yes, this is something that is doable and we're gonna, go
Yeah,
move
and we
forward
use a
with it.
software program called Image Trend right now, and Image Trend has that ability to collect that data and then send it to the third party. But it's at a cost, so we incur additional costs from Image Trend to have that component of the software also. So, yeah, we'd have to look into all those.
So, yeah, so I think there's still but I think the first step would be to say, are we able to do it?
Yeah, correct.
So,
So I can work with the general manager and see if we want to send something to legal.
thoughts on this? I know you're-
I think going to legal to see whether or not it's even, if we can do it, it's the first step. The first thing. And I agree with everything you said.
Okay, so, so that one will be deferred to legal to determine if we're
Yeah, we
able
can,
to do that.
work with, I think really that, and then also finding, third-party, billing companies to see if they're interested. They can help us. I mean, they've worked with the other clients. This is something I've, not here, but elsewhere investigated and had a presentation on. And ultimately, the last agency I worked for, we opted not to proceed with it, but,
And why was that?
well, we had an all volunteer fire department, and so there was this sort of mixed messaging about what are we trying to recoup where these folks are not getting paid?
Yeah.
So, and really, it was just a very small, it was, at the end of the day, it was something like, maybe it was about $12,000 a year, just off the top of my head. It was like $10,000 to $15,000 a year in new revenue, based on the calls that we had and the costs that were incurred.
And honestly, based on our per call rate, whatever we established, if it's the total recoup of the engine company hour cost, then yeah, we'd have to have crunch those numbers, but in Atascadero it was about 250 an hour, times, let's say it's 25% of the call volume that we receive, and that's 250 calls, so $250 times 250 calls a year. So yeah, we're not looking at a lot of money.
And then other people take a piece of it, right? The billing company does. And so but as your point is, like, even if it's $5,000 a year, it's something we should be exploring. And I think that, our circumstances are unique here and from that regard. But I don't look at this as a big opportunity.
No, I think we just need to look at it to say, are we missing an opportunity? And I think we don't know.
Yeah.
And so I think it would be worthwhile in checking with legal. And I think even with a third-party administrator who is doing this for other agencies can probably give us some idea in terms of, what we can charge or what's being charged by other agencies. And so we can come up with something similar.
Yeah.
So, okay, all right, so let's move on then to the inspection program.
So I kind of covered that. Essentially what we're doing is we're going to start going out and hitting the businesses now. That was going to be a bit of a hold off until we got some of the other stuff we're dealing with taken care of, but particularly that hospital corridor. There's a lot of businesses and surgery centers and a variety of different, occupancies in there that we're not even sure what they're bringing in. Dentists, sometimes they use gas, sometimes they don't. Radiation from some of the radiology companies that we have, Templeton Radiology, Radiology Associates, having the proper door identifications and placarding and MSDSs and essentially our pre-plans laid out for these facilities. I know years ago, we actually had an X-ray table catch fire in the hospital. And it was one of those moments where we were fishing through the corridors, trying to find the actual room with a lot of smoke in the corridors. And particularly these surgery centers have to be constructed in such a manner that they have isolated areas and doors shut automatically and all of that kind of stuff. So we just need to be confident that they're you know, operating safely and doing the proper things, because these people are unable to self-extricate when they're under the anesthesia and whatnot.
So do you charge a fee for the inspection programs, or that's just a thing so that a preventative medicine, so that when your men go in there, then you know what's there?
Yeah, we don't currently charge a fee.
Mhm.
In the future, I'll be recommending a fee.
And then do you, if you go in to, let's say Radiology Associates, and you find out that there's acid tanks there and other stuff going on, do you put that into a database, or do you just put it onto the door only? I mean.
No, it goes into what we call a pre-plan.
Mhm.
So essentially what happens, if we get a call to that facility or that address, we open a book or a iPad to that particular,
And so then you're
and
aware
it
of.
brings up the information on that building. The
So you know
owner,
what's there.
occupant, the contact, any specific hazards, where our electrical and water shut off is, where our fire department connection is, all the particulars that we would need to identify for an incident in that
So
building.
those inspections then would update that database.
Exactly,
Which would really be a risk mitigation. for-
100%, yeah,
For the firefighters.
right.
Right.
Well, and it's not only that, but it's what we call area familiarization and business familiarization, because if a firefighter goes into a place for the first time and they've never seen it, they're at a disadvantage.
Yeah.
If they're out there walking these facilities, going in, through, around, they become far more familiar and, you know, oh yeah, we've been here before. I know right where that room is, that type of thing. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, anything else on the inspection program? Okay, training.
I had a little training video, unfortunately.
You know,
that's
I
not
feel
gonna
your
work
pain.
either.
My laptop died on me and I had to go get a new laptop.
It's not,
It's not my laptop.
it's, our connectivity with the system is
Oh.
not.
Oh, it's not cooperating?
Show it to just them without it going on.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
screen, 'cause
yeah.
You could just show it to them off your laptop, just sitting right here in the room.
Well, yeah, and actually that didn't even,
Oh, maybe there's a problem with the
Will it show
laptop.
up on your laptop?
no, it won't come up on the laptop.
Oh.
So anyhow, I'll get that and send it to you. But essentially what I wanted to do with this video was kind of show you what we've been doing. It had a lot of videos per se in our investigation class that we hosted. The practical part of, actually the general manager got to take part in some of that. But we burned a room down at our Conex box tower where we set up a mock room, put furniture in it, and then they lit it off, and it was for arson investigation. Two of our captains, Wall and Goldblum, are in the class. And then our on-duty crew was tasked with putting the fire out. We had some Molotov cocktail demonstrations. We had two vehicle fire demonstrations, and all of those with regards to arson investigation. So I kind of wanted to show that to you because we have got some good footage on it. And then
The most impressive thing was this dead Christmas tree burning.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a,
see if
I don't have a I don't have a Christmas tree, and I certainly wouldn't have kept one that long. But that burned really fast,
Oh,
really
yeah,
fast,
it just goes out like,
instantly.
like you're lighting a match.
Well, what set it on fire?
Just I think it was just a
We-
lighter. It was nothing. It was
Yeah,
like.
but it's so dry, it's just
Oh,
and brittle.
so, well, shoot, there it goes.
Yeah,
I go with an
it-
artificial tree.
Yeah, it would have, I mean, it was definitely well beyond dry.
Okay, so here it is. I don't know if you guys want to.
Oh, that's the tree in there?
holy cow,
Yeah.
went up really fast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like instantly, virtually. I mean,
And is the other container, are those open to one another? Or is it just
Yes,
smoke?
they're- they're
Okay.
Yeah, there's a door through there.
Maybe that's what we do is put containers out there. I've seen this built out into homes.
Yeah. And then the other one, that kind of. The other one was the actual structure burn in the container.
That would scare me to go into, considering what, is there any other exit windows outside those containers? Oh, couldn't get me to go in there.
We need to have you guys down there for a demonstration burn, not to show you what the guys are dealing with.
Look at
Must be
that.
coming off of that, look at that.
Yeah, that was about 1,400 degrees, I think.
Yeah, I remember at least 12 on this,
1,200 degrees.
pretty dang hot. Cook a pizza in 1 minute.
Yep.
Yeah.
Fry an egg in seconds.
Essentially, that's kind of some of the training.
And are you able to reuse those containers for that purpose?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Some of the the enhancements we want to do, which we've done the concrete around. We want to do some base now. I got an estimate for asphalt. That was kind of like our station estimate. It was about 4 times what I thought it was going to be for asphalt. But now we're looking at doing, I called Wyrick Sand and Gravel and talked to a gentleman over there, and his recommendation was this red rock. It's got base, but it's got clay and it's got some other stuff, reground asphalt like mixture, and it compacts really hard and water runs off it just tremendously well once it's compacted. And so I'm gonna go over and take a look at that. 100 tons of that is what Captain Wall estimated. And we would come in, kind of regrade and recompact, and now we're good to drive our fire engines in there while they're leaking all the water. We don't sink a tire like we do now.
Yeah.
And so doing that type of stuff, adding what we call cement board to the inside of those containers to where we're not getting the deformity on the wall because it's taking all the heat. And if we put these cement board separators up, it just deflects that heat and allows the container to last a lot longer. So those are some of the things.
Yeah, it
that
looks
we're-
like it's taken a little bit of abuse.
Well, they weren't in tip-top shape when we got them. either.
No,
These are repurposed
Ah.
containers, so they weren't fresh off the manufacturing line when they
Ah.
arrived.
yeah. And that may be something in a few years, we might be looking to replace those containers and take the stairs out and redo it. It was done a little uniquely, and there's some challenges to the way they were put together, so we would definitely want to kind of redo that. But the way we poured the concrete is the containers are bolted down. We can lift the top ones off, lift the bottom ones off, and just put new ones back in
Oh, well, that's
place.
good.
So, the last item on training was, Captain Klein is completing his company officer certification, so he's 2 classes into a 4-class series. And then probably after this fire season, we'll have our engineer Rob Baker start that process also.
Good. That's good.
But classes are now opening up, and a lot more in-person type stuff. So we're anticipating that we're going to start to see those really start to come back online and get the guys out to them. And everybody's pretty excited about, because we've had a significant lag of about 2 years because of COVID, of not having any of these classes available.
Yeah. They didn't even do them on Zoom?
Nope, you can't do some of
You
them on
can't.
Zoom.
Well, I would think some of them you would be able to do, but
Yeah,
some of it is hands-on, I'm sure.
correct.
Well, that's exciting. I'm sure they're all looking forward to that,
Yeah,
so,
100%.
okay. All right, any other items for us to discuss?
No, it was a long, we had a
It
lot.
was a
lots of-
long meeting and a lot of things to cover, so thank you for scheduling the meeting. And then we'll look forward to having the revised estimate to be a little more inclusive of what some of the
Yeah, and
additional
we'll get
costs
to work
are.
on what we can do as a
Interim.
interim measure and also not block the construction area, that kind of thing. So I don't,
Well,
wait, see.
Yeah, and again, one of those primary things, I mean, I think, because some of our concern is that back door, that hangar door is starting to scare all of us because
The one that opens up, yeah.
because it's got some really funky noises now, when it goes up, down, and just when it's kind of hanging in place, it'll make really loud bangs every once in a while, so I don't know when the last time it was tested, but it would be good to get that down and maybe even put up the wall, that's gonna be there,
Mhm.
to seal that off, but creating openings to where if we did go the modular concept, then, we could do a little breezeway or something connection to the apparatus bay from that, so, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. We can adjourn our meeting. It's 10:51, so thank you all.
Question from the budget committee meeting, since we're off.